This is Asia's Farm to Fork 5 Good Questions podcast, bringing you insights and views from across Asia's food value chain. Now, for today's interview. Hi, everybody. I'm Duke Kip, host of Asia's Farm to Fork 5 Good Questions podcast, and we're delighted today to bring another leader in the agriculture space here in Asia, Susanna Hasenoehrl, with Yara International, Director for Asia, Growth and Commercialization with Yara here in Asia. Susanna, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me here. Pleasure.
Great. Well, again, this is 5 good questions. We hope they're good questions, but we'll soon find out. I know there'll be good answers, and we'll get started with that. So, first question, I think one of the areas that is really becoming more and more than just a buzzword. It really is sort of a societal movement, is around sustainability, particularly with respect to food and agriculture. Where does your food come from? How is it grown? Is it grown sustainably? It's becoming, as I said, a growing movement, really. And it's driven by a number of different things, as you know, whether it be dwindling natural resources or interest in healthier diets and lifestyles, and really just greater awareness around, again, where our food comes from. So this is something I know that's really near and dear to your heart, and certainly at the center of the work that you're doing here in Asia. So my question for you, getting back to sustainability, what are the greatest challenges do you think for ensuring sustainability here in our food systems in our region here in Asia?
Mm-hmm. Well, climate change is the biggest challenge that the humanity is facing, and here in Asia, it's manifesting itself in very significant ways. And also, if we look at our economies, the Asian economies are disproportionately affected by climate change already. We have several countries such as India and Myanmar that are at the very high risk index in terms of changing weather patterns, which of course affect the agricultural activities as well, and our food security.
Absolutely. No, I think it's indisputable. And we look around us here in Asia, particularly how it affects the farmers and how they're having to really, mitigate the impacts of climate change. There's no doubt it is having a huge effect here. Well, sort of a follow-up to that question, sticking with sustainability. I think you're probably aware of this. There's a big event coming up on the near horizon here, the 2021 UN Food System Summit. And for those listening, maybe not familiar with that, the Food System Summit is all about looking at the United Nations 17 SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and really kind of taking a second look at those, determining how can we make sure that we're on target there, and frankly falling behind a little bit, but also ensuring healthier, more sustainable, and equitable food systems. Well, and in the wake of COVID-19 and the pandemic, I think it's fair to say we've all learned a lot from just that very topic around what is and isn't working well, and where the gaps are in the food system, and really the fragility, right, of our food system. So if you were talking not to me, but to someone with the United Nations who's really helping form all of this, one of the policymakers, in your mind, are there 1 or 2 must-haves as far as making our food systems more resilient, particularly here in Asia?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, resilience really is the key word. And I think one thing that the pandemic has shown, that these very, complex supply chains, value chains, are something quite risky. When people cannot move, produce cannot move, inputs can't move, and so on. So I think really one of the key issues to address is to increase the resilience of our food systems. So, and I think the pandemic has kind of also accentuated showing the limitations of globalization. I think regionalization and even like localization is kind of on the rise, and this also comes with added benefits to sustainability. So the more resilient and local our food supply can be, obviously that is also better for the environment by saving a significant amount of transportation costs as well. But we also have to look at the local food systems. Monocrop systems are quite at high risk, and a single pest incident, for instance, can wipe out an entire field. So I think having more varied ways of growing our food with greater variety of the crops and produce is something that can address food security effectively. And then the local supply chains, closed chains, we need to also address regenerative and circular loops there. And, the more exposed these become to, very broad international change, when a part of that change is broken, it's quite hard to correct that in the short period of time that is necessary to ensure food security.
No, absolutely. It's very good, very good point. And I think, sort of moving on to the third question, it's a perfect segue thinking about, as you just said, the uniqueness of Asia and the regenerative aspects and sustainability, how it all kind of works together, making sure that the food systems are more resilient. Here in Asia, we have a very unique situation where we have more smallholder farmers than anywhere in the world. I think something like 85% or so of the world's smallholders are here in Asia. So a lot of challenges come with that, obviously. I think we have the smallest size farms and, of course, the largest number of the smallholders here. So with that in mind, what can we do as stakeholders, food, agriculture stakeholders, to make sure our farmers are really enabled to do what we're asking them to do, right? To grow more food sustainably.
So the sustainability ask on the farmers here in the region, especially the smallholder ones, is a big one. I mean, let's face it, a lot of these farmers don't really have much resilience built in them. For funding their activities, they rely on their retailers or family members or others, and actually operate their business on credit. In many countries, we have also high levels of debt. That is affecting a lot of people in a very negative way. At the same time, we're kind of expecting as consumers and societies the food to be safer, cleaner, and more sustainable. But what are we really doing to help the farmers to achieve that? Switching to more sustainable practices can sometimes require investment. Who's to fund that? Who's to compensate for that? Are we willing to pay a higher food price as a result? I think the picture is a bit mixed, but also many smallholders still lack knowledge about the best agronomic practices to even start the change process. So I think we as a society, and also players in the agricultural industry, need to address that. And in order for the farmers to raise to the sustainability challenges, we need to help them. We need to help them with knowledge. We need to help them with funding. And obviously, this should result in a equitable price for the food as well. I'm looking at carbon credits as an interesting new way of addressing this. Carbon credits obviously have the dilemma of kind of perpetuating some of the negative loops in terms of allowing high emitters to continue high emission activities. At the same time, I do see that the funding that carbon credits can generate for smallholder farmers, if they switch their practices, can constitute an important part of the financial compensation and also incentive for the farmers to adopt more sustainable practices.
It's very insightful. No, and that gets right to the heart of the matter, tackling both issues as far as empowering the farmers, but also at the same time addressing the lack of finance, right? Access to finance at the same time. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'd like to pivot maybe to COVID-19. The pandemic, of course, took root here a little over a year ago, and while it's been quite a journey, I think it's unfortunately hasn't spared farmers along the way. You've seen a lot of disruption along the food value chain, and how it's impacted farmers. It's been very disruptive as far as just basic things, as far as having access to inputs, having access to markets. You've seen some heartbreaking examples. I can think of one in Malaysia where you've seen farmers having to dump fresh fruits and vegetables on the side of the road because of transport issues. So a lot there. And I'm just wondering, is there a lesson in all of this for us, as far as particularly with respect to stakeholders and things that we should be thinking of, as far as letting policymakers know we need to do a better job, frankly, with some of this?
Well, I think, localizing some of the supply chains and building more resilient system obviously plays a role here. And digital can be a key enabler here. We definitely see, a few countries in the region China, Thailand as examples where farmers have actually become active themselves in directly marketing their produce to consumers over the standard e-commerce platforms that exist there. So I do think that this kind of developments where the time and the route from the producer to the consumer is shortened, whether through digital ways or others, is actually a great development, as we're likely to incur less losses on the way, the produce is fresher, and also environmentally, we save a lot of fuel and other resources in transportation. So obviously this requires a new skill set from the farmers, and it's not applicable for all crops, but some premium fruits and vegetables, especially if in the segment of organic or other higher quality products. This can also actually have a nice impact on the farmer's income. But of course, it's another skill that the farmer needs to learn, and add this on top of all the other duties, the long days on the field. Understand it can be a stretch. It's probably a business opportunity for someone to facilitate this.
Sure. And you make a very good point. That same case in Malaysia I'm thinking of as a follow-up. I believe I read recently that the Malaysian government has announced that you've seen that uptick, right? Uptick in adoption with e-commerce and this proliferation of platforms that are now available, at least in Malaysia, and that's a good development. It's an interesting new development that's come about because of that. Is there anything we can do to encourage that even further, or kind of stoke the flames a little bit with the adoption there?
Yeah, well, one of Yara's partners, DTAG, one of the mobile operators in Thailand, has actually over the years also provided quite significant programs in helping farmers to do exactly this, to help them learn the relevant skills to market their products online. And I think a lot of the e-commerce players are also offering this kind of services and support. So I think that's good development there. I think one added benefit is also that once we as consumers have more knowledge about the provenance of the food and how it's been produced, well, first of all, this establishes some greater accountability, but also, again, to my point about appreciating food, when you know where it comes from, where it has been produced, I think it's easier to appreciate the efforts of the farmers to produce all this nutrition for us and not to waste.
That's right. Excellent. Well, we come to the last question, and we've talked about quite a few challenges here, that whether it be the pandemic or particularly with the farmers and their experience or sustainability and resilience of the food system. So a lot we've covered here. But with the fifth question, we try to focus on maybe more of the opportunity or some positives, some good news. So asking you to maybe take a look at the crystal ball, looking ahead perhaps by 10 or so years for Asia. Is there one area you would point to say that you think this will be achieved, or some benchmark that will be reached for Asia that's a good development?
What I wish for the future is actually a greater appreciation of the food that we eat, and also all the hard work that especially the smallholders of this world here in Asia and also other parts of the world put in to provide us with all the necessary nutrients and nutrition that we need. There's an awful lot of wastage. The estimations vary, 30-40% of the food being wasted, whether it's on the way from the farmers to consumers or in shops, restaurants, and there's a really big environmental and opportunity cost with this. And I think that in many parts of the world, food being so readily available in all different shapes and forms at any time of the day, anywhere, it has led to this kind of lack of appreciation of what this all actually means in terms of how much effort and resources it takes to produce food, to bring it from the farm to the table. And let's face it, in many places of the world, food is very cheap, especially junk food, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So attractive. So what I really wish for and perhaps when the COVID is over, more people would have a chance to visit farms, whether it's very progressive vertical farms here in Singapore or otherwise, and to kind of experience and see themselves what it really all means to produce all these foods. Having a greater understanding of how far food travels today from around the world, refrigerated or frozen, when we would have, more local options available as well, which often would be healthier at higher quality, taste so much better. Yeah. So I think that moving forward, unfortunately, we will face significant food security issues, very turbulent global markets. Not all foods will be available at any time at the cost that we would like. But I think this might have a positive effect on our appreciation of food and nutrition.
Yeah.
And to address my earlier point about supporting farmers in their sustainable transformation, I do want to share that Yara has recently launched the Agoro Carbon Alliance with the mission to do exactly this. And one of the key elements in the Agoro Carbon Alliance is to actually provide farmers with funding, so effectively compensation for adopting climate-friendly practices that help to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from farming activities, as well as sequester more carbon in the soil. So do check it out and join the movement.
That's a great answer. I think you're absolutely spot on. Perhaps if there is a silver lining in all of this, it is hopefully a greater appreciation for the farmers and those who are really working to ensure our supply of safe, nutritious food every day. So thank you, Susanna. Thank you for joining us today. Again, much appreciate your time and your insights, and hope to do this again. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and if you did, please rate, review, and subscribe. We look forward to bringing you another 5 Good Questions interview